Hey everybody, as you get into chapter 4, which is legibility and readability, we're going to come across a few terms that I wanted to explain and demonstrate. They're called tracking, kerning, and also we're going to talk about justified text and how to resolve the rivers of negative space that they spoke about in the textbook in the chapter. You're looking at pictures of my letterpress that I've used in schools, in classes to teach kids about typography. The reason I'm showing these is because even though we're doing digital typography, a lot of these terms came from the days when people set text by hand. So what we're seeing is text that was set by sixth graders on my press, along with some linocut images. So this is from a page of one of the documents I'm working at work for a parts catalog for jet ski parts. And you can see there's a paragraph at the top of the page, and it is justified to the left-hand side, and it's ragged on the right-hand side. And I just wanted to start out by turning this into fully justified text. Before I do that, I also wanted to align it to the baseline grid. To do that, I showed the lines of the baseline grid by hitting W on my Mac keyboard. W shows all the grid you can see. I also have vertical grids there. Next, I clicked on the heading text, and with my cursor in there, I can adjust the heading to also align to the baseline grid. Change from the character panel to the paragraph panel. Once you're on the paragraph panel, you want to go over to find where the grid alignment tool is, and you can go from unaligned to an aligned baseline grid. Baseline grid makes it easier to line up things on the same page or even on facing pages in a spread. Next, while I'm in the process of formatting my text box, I want to add some margin space to the left and the right so that's not right up against the page margins. Now that I've done that, I can click the Justify Text so that my text will look even on both the left side and the right side. This is what we're looking at. You see I'm pointing with the arrow. That is the bigger spaces between the words that sometimes give that river of white space effect that it talks about in the textbook. To fix that, I'm going to adjust the spacing between the words and the letters so that each of the lines is closer together, and it will get rid of those rivers. Watch what I'm doing. So I'm going to change from the paragraph panel back to the character panel. That's the A at the top corner there. And from there I'm going to go to the tracking adjustment, and I'm going to adjust my tracking, and as that number gets larger, you can go up or down. It's going to make the spaces between the letters further apart, which makes the spaces between the words smaller. You don't want to do anything too drastic here, but you can see as I'm going line by line, I'm looking for the lines that have the biggest rivers of white space in them. And I am adjusting just a little bit to get the text the way I want it to look. And if you don't do it too much, it won't be too noticeable, but you'll get rid of those rivers of white lines. So that's your tracking adjustment tool. Once you've tracked all the lines, you don't really need to do the last line because you selected the Justify tool that has that shorter last line. It actually is just normal tracking. It's not putting it into Justify mode. If you chose the fully Justify mode that includes the last line, you'd have to do that line too. Okay, so we've been talking about tracking and how we use it to fix spacing between words, whole words, and also whole lines of text. But I'd like to focus on kerning, which is what we're going to look at right now. Kerning affects the physical space between two letters or a letter and a punctuation or any two glyphs. A glyph is the particular shape of a single letter tile, and in type, you can see that these numbers have hyphens. These are what we call OE numbers in the business that I'm in. And notice that the spacing between, see the 1 there and the 00? It looks like the hyphen is closer to the 0. So what I'm doing is I'm adjusting it by moving the 00 over a little bit, or increasing the space between the hyphen and the 00. And when I do that, I'm looking at the different letters. Notice I didn't increase the space between the 1 and the hyphen because the 1 is very centered in its text space, right? In its little box, if we draw a box of the same size around each of the letters, where each 0 goes out to the edges of the box. Same thing with the 6 and the 8 there. The hyphen is near the bold part of the 6 and the 8, that enclosed part at the bottom. and they were kind of close together, so I nudged them over. And the way that you do that is you are going to use some of the keys on your keyboard. The easiest way, actually, you place your cursor in between two letters or between a letter and a symbol. And if you use the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC and you hit the right arrow, you'll see the letters shift over as I do that. So that's one way of adjusting the kerning. So now I want to show you the kerning tool. This is the one that's in the character panel at the top left-hand side of your screen. What you'll see there is, remember when we looked at the tracking tool, well, the kerning tool is right above that. It looks like the capital V / capital A with an arrow pointing backwards. That's your kerning tool. You can see me adjusting it. It went from 0 up to 80, and you can use the up or down arrows, and there's also a drop-down menu using the caret, the downward facing arrow on the right-hand side of the 60, and you can use some preset values there. So that's tracking and kerning. They're both adjusting the width of the line of text, but in tracking you're adjusting entire word spacing. And in kerning, you're really focused on what's happening between two letters or a letter and a symbol, or two symbols, rather than being focused on the entire word at once. I wanted you to get those terms straight. The bottom tool there, the VA, the arrow in white, is the tracking tool. The one above it with the A with the slash in between, and it's got a black background, that's the kerning tool. And don't forget that you can use the shortcut on the keyboard for kerning. The shortcut is, if you're on a Mac, Option right arrow would move the letters farther apart and left arrow would move them closer together. And if you're on a PC, you're going to do the same thing, except instead of hitting Option, you're going to hit Alt. So in this video, we introduced baseline grid, we learned about justified text and how to fix those rivers, mostly using tracking, and then we also learned about the difference between tracking and kerning. Have a wonderful day, everybody.